Hi, I'm Katie Bray, and today I wanted to talk about coping with COVID-19. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot because it's been coming up a lot for my clients. And so it's really gotten me thinking as I look at where we are going just as a collective, but also as individuals in this incredible time. If you've watched my previous videos where I talked about the fact that we are in a 6th and 7th chakra era, and the video before that, how we got there, you'll know that where I believe we're headed very strongly is this sort of tipping point where our collective is in a place where we're being initiated. We're moving up to the next level. We're moving into that new earth that even Eckhart Tolle wrote a book about 15 some odd years ago. So what does that mean for us now? I think that's a really important question because there is this sort of macrocosm, microcosm. We're all having this experience, this collective experience, and yet individually we are experiencing it in our own way. And what I think is really an important conversation to have is how do we utilize this time? And also, how do we cope with a lot of the drama that's going on around this virus? I don't know about you, but even as recent as this weekend, there are protests about, getting rid of the shelter in place. And while I don't really want to get into controversial topics, I don't want to be part of the polarization, I do think it's important to note that things like that, or that this virus is a conspiracy, these are all things that are sort of seeping into the collective. So is all of the fear. So is all of the mayhem. And these are really relevant things because most of us are plugged into it consciously. Some of us not as consciously, but if you're watching this, chances are pretty good you're pretty consciously tuned into what's going on. So I think the question to start with is, where are we now? What is true in this moment, collectively and individually? So collectively, we know that we have this virus going around. And whether you believe it's as bad as people say it is or not, we are still dealing with a massive crisis, a massive global crisis. And for many of us, the question is, how can I be a part of the solution? And we've talked about that in some of the previous videos, but I think, not just thinking in terms of, can I get groceries for my elderly neighbor? Can I call and check on people who might be feeling isolated or depressed? I know people who deal with depression and anxiety. This can be a really challenging time. So of course there are things that we can do to provide service for other people. But I also think that part of what's important about this time is us understanding what is important that we do for ourselves. While this is a massive global initiation, I also believe that it is very much an individual initiation. And in my listening, in my meditations to the collective, and in my listening to my clients, and even in my listening in my own life, I'm looking at, what is my next stage? What does this mean for me? What is my own next stage of development? Where is my soul essence calling me into my next step of expansion, my next expansive move? And what's interesting about this is, there's sort of this tension between that being a very, maybe that could be a sort of more of a mental conversation that we have. Like, what are some of the things that I can do? What does that look like? Things like that I think are equally important. But what I think is really a big piece of this is not staying here in the mind, using the mind as a tool, of course, but really going into the deeper aspects of ourselves and asking questions like, what have I been putting off? What have I been saying, I'll get to this when that happens. I'll do that later. What is that consistent thing that you have heard over and over and over again, whether it be an internal desire, whether it be something that has consistently come up that you have repeatedly put off. I think it's a really good time to start to inventory those calls, those desires. It's really important because I believe that there is a piece of our essence that is consistently drawing us into our expansion. And it often uses ideas. It often uses the collective universe, spirit, who is always talking to us to send us messages. Or it'll often use our body. It'll give us this well of desire that wants to be something, that wants to be expressed. And so as, the majority of us are at home, our lives are radically different right now. It's a really beautiful time to sort of quiet ourselves and go into that inner reserve and ask, what has that thing been? And is there a message in that for me? I think that's sort of the bigger question there. Is this something that really wants to be expressed? And is now the time? Or am I feeling the percolating of that time coming? It's a really good time to be quiet and be still. And in that, the next piece, I think, is organizing our energy, organizing what we are experiencing on a regular basis. And what I mean by organizing is, I guess I'll give a sort of a contrasting example. Obviously there's a lot of chaos in the world right now. There's a lot of chaos that many people are experiencing. Some of us are experiencing it in our own lives, or we're just looking at it through the window, through the lens of media or social media, or empathically we're picking it up. But no matter how we're picking it up, there is this disorganization, which is really part of transformation. There's got to be disorientation or within that transformation. That it's just a part of it. And at the same time, we don't have to be swooped away and carried away so that we are so frenetic that we're spinning around in all of this energy and we can't find our own center, that we can't find our own footing. And so as we are in this process of listening to ourselves in a deeper listening, spiritual practice is incredibly important right now. Whatever that is for you, I'm not speaking of religions or anything even specific. I'll give some examples. But I think your essence, your soul knows that answer of what that is for you better than anyone. So I know for me, I'm doing a lot of extra breath work and yoga and meditation. And I'm spending a lot more time journaling. I've always been an avid journaler, but I'm spending a lot more time in that because I'm really in that deep listening. For me, these are practices that keep me in touch with myself, that cue me in when I know something wants to expand or something needs movement, where maybe there's a trapped energy or an energy that's just having a hard time getting out, and I just need to be present with it so it can move. These are the ways that I personally do that, and I know that they're very effective ways for a lot of people. In fact, these are practices that I prescribe, if you will, to many of my clients. But only you really know what that is for you. And so that sort of takes me into this next piece that I want to address. My background is in Ayurveda. If you're not familiar with that, you could certainly look it up, but I'll just say in brief, Ayurveda means the knowledge of life or the wisdom of life. Some people say it's the science of life, but it is considered an ancient Indian science. And in Ayurvedic philosophy, this idea of your environment being your extended body is prevalent. It's an important understanding, and I want to say that again. Your environment is your extended body. So many of us know that, there's all kinds of ways that people say this, a cluttered room is a cluttered mind, a cluttered desk is a cluttered mind. Many of us thrive in very specific environments. Doesn't mean we always keep them that way, but there are ways that we thrive more in our environment. And in this context, our environment it's your home, it's your office, it's your car, it's even your primary relationships. It's really the places, the people and places that you spend the majority of your time. So again, for many of us, we are in our homes with really the way that we're keeping in touch with the world is through news and through social media. I want to say that it's important that we take care of how much we are listening to news and how much we are on social media. Beyond that, what I find to be important is, okay, so I want to be on, social media because it's where I connect to certain people, and I want to watch some of the news because I want to feel like I'm up to date on what's going on. Fair enough, I get that. But I think beyond this idea of limiting our time with the things that could really fuel this frenetic energy is actually intentionally seeking out the things that nourish us, intentionally flooding our systems with the things that cause us to feel expansive and elevated. That is really important. It's not enough just to take certain things away. We need to fill that space with something else. Not always is that true. Sometimes I think it's important that we're able to sort of sit in the void. Under these circumstances, I find that flooding our systems with things that actually feel like they are contributing to our life, contributing to our life force energy is really, really important. Because right now, our energy systems have this constant barrage of fear, anxiety, of whether we're personally experiencing it or not. It's so heavy in the collective right now that it's really important that for us to maintain this high vibration, for us to keep moving in our initiation so that we are really taking part of this global initiation in the highest way, we want to make sure that we sort of double down on the things that make us feel good, which is beyond spiritual practice. I mean, certainly if you want to and can do more of your spiritual practice, by all means. But I even mean, when you're cooking dinner, that you're putting on music that really excites you and delights you and elevates you and gives you just this lighter energy. So it really can look like a lot of different things. But it's so important because our systems, our mind, our body, our energy systems, it has to be able to process and break down and assimilate and digest everything in our environment, everything that we give it. It has to be able to work with. And when it can't, because something feels too toxic or it's just overwhelming for the system, whatever it is, it gets lodged in our system. It's a lot like eating junk food, like binging on junk food and then wondering why we're not feeling so great, wondering why, we're not going to the bathroom regularly or whatever happens, our energy goes down, we're more depressed, all of those things is equally true with our mind and our spirit and just our overall energy system. So our environment and what we are surrounding ourselves with at this time is incredibly important. It's incredibly important because we want to start orienting ourselves to what will become our new normal. So not only is it getting us through in the highest way possible this time of crisis, it's also really starting to set the foundation for whatever that new normal is going to be. I see a lot of people who are like, let's just get back to normal, open everything up. And I want to say, and I'm sure many of you probably feel the same way or very aligned with this, that even when things do open back up, we are not going back to what used to be normal. We are completely moving into a new normal. And I know that that's what creates a lot of fear for people because the unknown can be really challenging. So right now, in this time with so many unknowns, it's important that we start to lay the foundation for what our new normal will become. And that new normal must be anchored into ourselves. It must be that we are carrying this more tuned in aspect of ourselves and what we desire and who we are here to be and how we are here to affect the world in our own way, big or small. It doesn't matter. That doesn't have to be this grandiose idea. But I will say the more that we are aligned with our essence and what our soul is asking of us, the more we are of service to the world naturally, because we are vibrating in alignment with who we are here to be. And there is no higher service of that. And now is the time for us to inventory the ways that we have not been allowing ourselves to be that, and allow ourselves to step into full alignment with what that is. And what that requires is listening deeply, moving into spiritual practice and figuring out whatever that is for us. And then really surrounding ourselves with the most nourishing, uplifting, elevating things that we possibly can. You know, I feel really blessed because I'm trapped in my home with like my favorite people in the world. I have my animals, I have my husband, I have my kids. Honestly, I couldn't imagine, being unhappy this way, to be honest. But I also know that I'm one of the lucky ones, that some of you are alone, and you've been alone for a long time without any human contact. And I know that that can be really hard for some of you. I know that some of you are not in the best living space or living circumstances, and that can be incredibly painful and so challenging. So I want to acknowledge that I understand where I'm coming from, and I understand that not everyone is coming from where I am. But what I can tell you is that no matter what your circumstance right now, if you just take the guidance of what your internal intuitive system, your essence, your soul, if you just listen to its prompts and you develop that spiritual practice that is really coming from what your essence is asking for, and you start to build your expansiveness onto that, you're going to be ready for whatever is coming next. You're going to be ready to be a part of this new earth in such a different place. So I really feel that using this time right now to our advantage is what is needed. It's really a gift. It's like we've just unplugged 2020 so far, and here we are, lights are out. We can use this time for what I believe it's intended for. And so we can also do that for those who don't understand that that's possible, or maybe they just don't have the capacity to do it. For those of us who do understand this and feel called into this kind of action, it's more important now than it's ever been for us to really stand in that place and hold that container for everyone, for ourselves, which means for everyone. So stay out of the drama as much as you can and flood your system with everything nurturing and nourishing and expansive. It's easy to be lazy right now. It's easy to want to lie on the sofa and just eat whatever. Certainly give yourself that, at times. I think that's great too. But I really think it's important to use this time in more productive ways. So I hope that you find this helpful. Please, comment, like, share. I'd love to hear about your experience and what you're going through, or even what are you doing right now as your practice? What are you doing to nourish and expand yourself? I would really love to hear about that. So put that in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe. You can like it as well, and you can watch more of my videos right over here.